Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Prepare to Repair show, powered by Ferguson Supply Kitchen, Bath, and Lighting Showroom, located at 7950 West 185th Street in Tinley Park, and RJ Graham Plumbing. I am your host, Plumber Steve, and I want to thank everybody for starting their weekend or week off with us, starting their weekend. My kids get me on that one every time. Starting the week off with us. You're listening to hopefully the most informative home improvement hour on radio. I want to thank my guest, or welcome my guest, who's joining me today, Mr. Kevin Mathers from KGM Home Inspections. Kevin was with us a few weeks back and is no stranger to all the good and bad when it comes to homes. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, we had a good conversation last time, and anything we can do to educate our homeowners, we off air we had that conversation just about educating the buyers and the sellers and the homeowners about what direction they should go.
Oh yeah, before we just before we went on the air, we were talking about a homeowner that I saw on social media that lives in an area that has well and septic, and she was wondering, because she had heard that there was the ability to connect onto and get public water, because she was getting tired of the well water, and a lot of people are. And there was a lot of information being thrown back and forth on that, whether it was, costs and connection fees and all this information. But I put out there that if you have that issue or you're looking for that, the way to see how quickly or how accessible any kind of public water would be to look outside and see if you see any fire hydrants nearby. And because most areas that are unincorporated that are on well and septic usually don't have any kind of public utilities. So,
right. Yeah.
But there are those odd occasions where you will have public water and sewer or public utilities running through an unincorporated location while feeding another part of the town that is, because it's kind of like, it's really weird how the boundaries are. And so it will feed an incorporated part, but it will go through one. I mean, there is that, possibility, but it's not really, it doesn't happen that often. But anyway, the long and short of it was, the question was asked, well, if there's no fire hydrants, what happens if there's a fire? Where do they get water?
Yeah.
And the answer was there's a tanker truck that they'll bring water to it to put it out. But, usually the first thing is the fire department wants to get everybody out, make sure everyone's safe, and then it's, putting out the fire. But that time that you have between everything that's happening and the tanker truck getting there, it's usually, the home is pretty much, suffering some severe damage at that point.
Yeah, average time right now when I talk to some different firemen that are in some of my classes, it's 3 minutes or less, and a fire is pretty much gone from one end of the house to the other at that point, especially if it's an older home.
Yeah, it's quick. I mean, but, again, property can be replaced.
Right.
Lives cannot. So the first and foremost, you want to make sure everybody's out safely and, and tend anybody who may be injured in the process. But the key thing is a lot of people, because she responded, she said, I didn't even think of that. But if when you grow up in areas and you think, there should be fire hydrants, and you overlook them because they're just everyday and mundane. Right. You overlook them because they should be there. But there are some areas in that are on well and septic that are like rural areas that don't have that. So care should be taken, extra care, I should say, if there are any issues, like, fireworks is one, in certain areas is.
Yep.
And also, when you're having burning or having fires, that's another thing to be cautious with. But I thought that was interesting that that the information that was given, a lot of people didn't know that.
Right. Well, or they don't think of it. It's just, right. I grew up in a rural area and there were no fire hydrants, you know, and it's just something you don't think about.
Yeah, it is. When you think about it, it's because I grew up in the city, and got hot, you open the fire hydrant. So, I don't do that anymore, but anyway.
Right.
But anyway, welcome, Kevin.
Thank you.
We kind of got
Steve.
off on
Appreciate
that.
it.
But you are a certified home inspector. We had you on before. Your credentials are, your reputation precedes you. You have credentials that are one after another, and congratulations on those.
Thank you.
Are, that shows you really are a student of your craft and always trying to get better and be the best you can be.
It's all about education, not only in our trade, but yours as well. It's the trades, materials, processes, applications. They're constantly changing and improving, and you've got to stay up on it. You really do.
Absolutely. Now, when you when you do an inspection, now I would say this: what is on average? How many inspections would you say you do a week?
On an average, roughly about 6 to 8 or so. Again, on average, there's, we kind of run in peaks and valleys. During the summer, it's kind of a busy time. There's times I may be doing 8 to 10, and, it starts to slow down a little bit going into fall. We kind of follow the sales, hills and valleys, of homes, not too much different really, with that. And there might be times I'm only doing 4. But I do try and keep it to a minimum. I normally, I usually won't do more than 2 a day. And it's usually, if one of those is a small one.
Okay.
Just because I don't like to rush through it. I average anywhere between 2 to 4 hours an inspection. Just depends on the size of the property and what I get into, as well.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, how long, do they take on average, and what do they entail? What exactly do you do on your inspections that you would say that, obviously you're like everybody else in their particular industry. You've got your ear to the ground on what you're doing versus what everybody else is doing. And I do that with plumbing. I try to do things that nobody else is doing to try and set myself ahead of the game. What do you do on your inspections that you think that would set you apart from everybody else?
Well, one of the things is the inspection starts off with me talking to my client right off of the get-go. If the agent happens to set up the appointment, or if someone calls me, about it, the very first thing is I'm having a conversation with my client, whether it be a buyer or seller, or whatever the case may be. I want to learn a little bit about them. What are their concerns about the home? Are they going to be at the inspection? I find that's important. I love when my clients are at the inspection. So, A, they see what I see. B, I'm there to answer questions for them and explain things, make recommendations, so they have a little bit better understanding than just reading something on a checkbox or a narrative in a report and not really understanding what I'm trying to convey. So it all starts out with, and that's part of the customer service thing, kind of talk them in off the window ledge a little bit. It's like, hey, it's an inspection. It's a house. You can fix it or not. I'm always going to find something, and it just depends on where, as I call it, where your line in the sand is on what you may or may not be able to deal with, tolerate, negotiate, whatever. And I don't get into that. I'm not there to tell them whether they should or shouldn't buy the home.
You're not the bad guy. A lot of times you're made out to be the bad guy because you found stuff.
I have to have hard conversations. I tell people a lot of times, look, I don't get hired for good news, but I also tell them I'm going to be the smallest check they write that can save them the most money.
Right.
At the end of the day. So, and then getting into the inspection itself, we have kind of 2 views overall that I work with. And one is, it's called the macro view. So I'll literally inspect this house from the sidewalk or the street, all the way around the house, the borders, the property lines, wherever. That's going to give me a macro view. I'm going to be able to see things in that house I'm not going to be able to see when I'm walking around the immediate perimeter. And then you have the micro view, and that's when you start peeling back the layers on everything and getting into it. And it starts with the exterior, grounds, roof. I climb every roof I possibly can. I come from a roofing background, so that's I'll probably climb some roofs. Some inspectors won't. If I don't feel it's safe and reasonable to that, I have a wide variety of ways to look at that roof, whether it be binoculars, drone, whatever. But I always still want to make sure I get a good look at the roof. That's
kind of cool.
Yeah. So, we get through that, then we just start making our way through the inside, usually the garage. get into the kitchen area, and then it's always kind of from a top down. Start at the top. With the exception of the attic. Attic and crawl spaces I leave for last, only because sometimes when you come out of those, you're not looking or smelling really good. So, we tend to leave those for last because toward the end of the inspection, we go room to room, light switch to light switch, outlet to outlet, faucet to faucet, toilet to toilet. We put things that would be considered their normal paces. We're not there to try and break something. We're there just to operate something the way the homeowner would, is what we do.
Now, I noticed, and this is just me, just in the business, the devil's in the details. And a lot of times you can tell by just walking in and seeing certain things that will give you an idea of what you have to work with.
Absolutely.
And I say that because, and I think I've told this story before, my brother was buying his house. This was about 10 years ago or so. And he was buying his house, and the house was probably about 25 years old. Now, walking through the house, I checked the plumbing out. We're going to get to some of the stuff that I did before, because we're on the same page as far as some of the things that should be done. Before a house is purchased, as far as the plumbing. But I checked out, certain things. Mm-hmm. Obviously, pumps. I told them about that, right off the bat, moving into a house, unless you can verify the age of those pumps, probably replace them.
Yep.
Put them as a replacement. But there were certain things that I saw in the house, like the faucets were original. The countertops were original. The fixtures were pretty much original. Now, and it was an older house, but them being original wasn't really the thing that stood out. Was they were immaculate original. They were in great shape, operating great. Everything was in great. It was dated, but it was in great shape.
Which is a rare find.
Right. So that, to me, told me that they were taken care of.
Maintenance.
There was maintenance. They were meticulous with it. So that right there is a positive sign going in to a home that you're onto something good here.
Yeah, things don't normally, as we like to call it, survive the test of time unless it's been maintained. Everything from plumbing to mechanicals to windows. It just all of that. I've been into homes less than 10 years old, and the windows are already in rough shape, and I've been in homes with 30, 35, 40-year-old windows, and they're in great shape. One of the things I tell people is you have to exercise your windows.
Yes.
Open and close them. And, in today's age with air conditioning, not too many people open windows anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Now, going over that, like I said, the devil's in the details, and you having sometimes be the bearer of bad news, do you find yourself with the way, I guess, properties maybe not being maintained or having issues or being the bearer of bad news, do you find yourself doing multiple inspections for clients that are looking for homes?
Yeah.
Is this common?
That's never really stopped, even over the past couple years, where it was kind of, in to some degree, a seller's market, which means there wasn't a whole lot being fixed to put the house on the market. It was pretty much take it or leave it, because they would have multiple offers on it, so they knew somebody was going to buy the house. There's times. There was one guy that, real quick story, out of Joliet here. I had done 5 inspections for him. And I think out of all 5, I think there were only 2 that the inspection report may have swayed him to not go that way. The other was, I don't know, it might have been financing or bank or seller or something else related. And I remember he called me on his 5th one, and I was looking at the phone call. I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me, And he called me, and he said, "Yeah, I've got another one." I said, "Okay." So, long story short, we got.
You did 5 inspections for this guy?
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. I mean, I try and give them a break as well, to some degree. But we got out to the 5th one, and this was all within probably 90 days. It wasn't like over the course of 12 months, right? I mean, it was a very short period of time. He was trying to buy a house.
Okay.
And we got done with the inspection, and the house was, I mean, there was always a few things, but all in all, the house was in pretty good shape. And then we got done with the inspection. He says, all right, just what do I write the check for? And I did not have the heart to charge him full price. I charged him $1 to make the contract legal.
Right.
I said, you know what, I can't charge a full price for this. I said I would have just felt bad. It's not where you do business, it's how you do business. I mean, you know that. And so I haven't heard back from him on number 6, so that house must have went through.
I was going to ask you that. So.
Yeah, and I do tell people too, after the 3rd inspection, I get invited to all the barbecues. So
there you go.
Yeah, well, that's in the fine print.
Well, you could probably pay for the food, but they get up after 3 of them. So, you're listening to the Prepare to Repair show here on 1340 WJOL with Kevin Mathers and me, Plumber Steve. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back after this.
40 WJOL.
Welcome back to the Prepare to Repair show. I am your host, Plumber Steve, back here with Kevin Mathers with KGM Home Inspection. And before the break, we were discussing multiple home inspections. Mm. Now, this obviously is common. And what I mean by multiple home inspections, this is a buyer that's buying and basically didn't buy it for whatever reason because there was a deal-breaking issue for them. Now, one thing I found is once you go out there and find something, the seller knows about it. So now they have to disclose it, where before, like I said, they would have, or not, like I said, they would have, say, plausible deniability. I didn't know this beforehand.
Right.
So if they go after your inspection and then they would generally have to fix it, right? Or
there's a little bit of gray area there. It just depends. My inspection report only goes to my client and anyone that they give me permission to. That's it. It doesn't go to the seller.
Right.
If they want to share it, at that point they can. But a lot of times, during the attorney review period, unless there's special circumstances, either party at that point can back out without even having to give a reason.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I mean, there's circumstances to all of that. It just really depends on how the contract is written up, the real estate contract. If I find something at the house, what we consider imminent danger, so if I find gas leaks, I'm going to let the seller, the listing agent, whoever, as many people as I know about it, so they can get it fixed right away. Or if there's a sump pump pit that's literally ready to flood the basement, it's like, you need to get a plumber in here to get this fixed, whatever the case may be on that. So those things we let the seller know. But other than that, unless it's along those lines, my conversations are only going to be with my client at that point.
So nobody would really know, so they could just go on to the next buyer.
Right.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
It's exactly.
I guess it's a flip of a coin because there could be other reasons why it didn't go through, and one could blame the house. Where so you're right about that. I mean, I guess it's just one of those things that how often does that happen where you're doing multiple houses? Has that been common recently?
You mean for the same person?
Yes,
almost probably at least once a week.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty common. With that. Again, it's been a crazy market. The agents that have hung in there and that have not gone crazy during the last couple of years, I applaud them because, it's just been really crazy out there. With the home buying, home selling, the process, the appraisals, and everything else that goes out there. I go in, I do my thing, I provide the report to my client, usually the client's agent with permission, and sometimes their attorney, again, with permission of the client.
Okay.
And at that point, I moved on. So, what they have done or not done at that point, unless I hear from them again to say, hey, we found another one. And a lot of times I will know by the end of the inspection if they're going to walk away.
Okay.
As well. So sometimes I'll get that feeling, or they'll let me know. It's like, we're probably done here. And I still encourage them, read through the report, sit down, talk to your agent, talk to your attorney, because you never know what the seller may or may not do. As far as coming back with, hey, look, I'll drop $10,000 because they might be in a urgent selling position. So, I always encourage them to talk to the rest of their transaction team, whoever that may be, to kind of work through this, not just immediately walk away.
Now, I'm going to ask you this. I don't know if you can say yes or no, but have you ever just had your client, buyer, you just told them nope, just nope? When
no,
they're like,
no, I've never told anyone whether they should or shouldn't buy it. I often get asked that question. People ask me, "Would you buy the home?" And my standard answer is, "No, I already have one." But
nope.
Yeah, I can't answer that for them, really.
Right.
But I mean, if I start finding like major concerns, I will, as we go through the inspection. That's why I like my clients there.
Right.
Maybe it's just a horrific foundation issue that's going to require an engineer to come in and really provide a course of action. It's like, here's what you got, and I'll continue to move on. And then, sometimes you'll get a hesitancy, and I'll ask them, do you want me to proceed?
Right.
At that point. And, they can make a decision, and depending on where we're at in the inspection, what they want to do. But, I'm not there to tell them whether they should or shouldn't buy it, because I don't know what their drive. I don't know what their motivation is. I don't even know what their intention is.
Yeah.
I've gone into some homes that I felt like, oh man, this is, thinking to myself, it's like, oh, this is a demo, right? And the client's like, you know what, all my family's into trades. I'm not worried about it. As long as I know what I have to fix, I'm good to go.
That's what I was going to say. You don't know what their deal breaker is for them because, there's people out there who I want it at face value. This is the way I want this to work, and,
right.
and I'm going to take it.
Right.
And I want to perfectly move in. I don't want to touch it. And then you have others that have that vision that are, I don't care if this thing is demoed. I'm going to destroy it anyway. So
right.
But they've done me, tremendous favor by doing some of the stuff that they've done. So I get your point. I was just wondering if you saw anything that you were just like,
no,
run.
No, I never go down that road. I mean, and there's an ethics clause. It's just we can't do that, and because again, I don't know where their mindset is. And I don't even want to pretend to know where it's at, because they're spending this kind of money. So it's, I need to be going in being very open about it. It's like, here's what you have.
Right.
It's up to you to figure out what you want to do with it.
Right. Now let me ask you this. What would be, and people have their own vision, especially first-time home buyers, on when they're, some of them, their green as green could be as far as
right.
buying anything. Now they're buying a house. What would you say is some of the misconceptions about a home inspection, or what people actually think your job is, what you're going to do for them?
It does kind of vary. A lot of times they think we're, part of the code enforcement, and, home inspectors, we don't get into the code. Now, it's not that we shouldn't know it. You and I have had code talks off the air, right? From an education standpoint. But code's not retroactive. You take a 60-year-old home today, it's not going to meet today's code, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing,
right?
As well. So we're not the code police. We don't get into that. We always defer them to the local building department and municipality, because it varies from one city line to the next. Sometimes it's the assumptions, or we can see through walls, or we have a crystal ball. So one of the things that home inspectors do, and some of them have different names for it. We call it a driveway speech. And basically what that is, it's to set in the expectation. Here's what we do, here's what we don't do. Right off of the get-go, so that they understand. It's a visual inspection. It's not intrusive. We're not here to open up walls. We're not going to really move or operate anything that the homeowner wouldn't. We don't move furniture. We don't clean out closets.
Right.
We're hoping that at least all the major stuff has safe and reasonable access for us, so that we can really give them a good report on what we find. So again, we kind of take them down the road of the process of what we do, and that kind of sometimes alleviate, well, I thought you were going to do this, and it's like, no, that's, this is how we're going to approach this, as well. It's like, I'll still get questions sometimes. There'll be a foot of snow on the roof, and, they'll ask me, are you getting on the roof? It's like, no, I'm not getting on the roof, because there's a foot of snow up there, as well. So, I mean, and you're right. It's they don't know,
right.
They just don't know. So we always have to take a step back and remember that we're trying to provide education. I mean, there's been times where, and I always go through at the end of the inspection, I try to, if my client's there, here's your main gas shut off, here's your main water shut off, here's your main service panel shut off, here's where you change your furnace filter. And there's been times where there's a furnace filter.
Oh, wow.
And again, it's just, it's a naive type of ignorance. They don't know what they don't know. Maybe they're coming from out of a high rise in downtown and this is their first real home.
I thought you were talking about the cellar.
No,
that's why I said, oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, some filters we'll look at and we'll wonder if the seller knows there's one there too. But,
right.
But it's just providing them with as much education as we can in that 2 to 3 hour time slot. And of course, we always open up, once they get the report, and even moving on, occasionally I'll still get a call or text from somebody I did an inspection a couple years ago because they've got a question about, do you know a plumber? It's like, oh, I happen to know a plumber, or, stuff like that or things of that nature, and just trying to at least point them in the right direction, if nothing else.
Well, that's what I like, because when you run into something, and I have heard that from homeowners that were selling their home and they're like, well, a home inspector told me I have to do this, this, and this. Do I have to? And I was like, well, first off, the home inspector, is telling you, going off of, like you said, today's code, which is, yes, ideally if you have a newer house and you're having something replaced in your newer house or older house, you have to bring it up to code. But if you're walking in and doing an inspection and everything is existing, it's functioning and operating, nothing is being worked on or being modified or touched in any way, shape, or form, that is going to be allowed to stay, unless it's a hazard,
right? Is
going to be allowed to stay there,
sure,
until it's being modified,
right,
in any way, shape, or form. So if there was a spigot there that was not a frost-free spigot, but is just a standard hose bib outside, but some older houses that are 60-plus years old have them, and the home inspector says, well, that should be frost-free. Yeah, it should. But this house, it's original to the house, and it is functioned like that, giving the new buyers knowledge that, okay, if this ever goes, you're going to have to do that. That's great. But saying that, okay, well, this on inspection, this should be replaced. Well, yeah, when it
right.
needs to be replaced, that's what you're going to have to replace it with.
And those are the recommendations we might.
Yeah.
Even using that, as an example.
Right. That's just a very loose example on
it.
If
I see that, I'm going to recommend a frost-free.
Right.
Also, potentially an anti-siphon valve. Or connection on it if it doesn't have one.
Right.
Again, these are just recommendations. As long as we have an item that is in good condition, it's serving its intended purpose or functioning as intended, right? And it's not creating a safety issue. Again, old doesn't necessarily mean it's a defect.
Right. Because realistically, you can walk in any house that's over 5 years old, that's had more than 1 or 2 owners, and you could find something that is a code violation.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is, because once you get to be around the 5 years old range, there's been something changed, something worked on, something adjusted.
Yeah.
So, you're going to have that. And chances are it was done via friends over or done by the homeowner, and it may not be exactly right.
Right.
So, you're going to get those. So, that's just the way things are. You're listening to the Prepare to Repair show. I am your host, Plumber Steve, with RJ Graham Plumbing, joined by Kevin Mathers with KGM Home Inspection. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with more Prepare to Repair after the
AOL.
Welcome back to the Prepare to Repair show. I am your host, Plumber Steve. Back with me is Kevin Mathers with KGM Home Inspection. And before the break, we were talking about what people expect from a home inspection. And I want to tell you that the information that you give about, deferring to, people in the know about certain things is really good, because a lot of times there is, there's good and bad in everything.
Right.
And the good ones will defer to the people so they can get the information that's going to facilitate them moving in the direction that they want to. But bad information can, be as much of a roadblock as well. So I'm glad that you are sending them to the people in the know, like the municipality, the local, plumbing inspector and so forth, because they'll give them the right information.
Yeah, we always are going to defer to the licensed or qualified professional to help them and determine the best course of action, whether it be a repair, replace, tear down, whatever it may be.
Right.
We're there kind of representing all the trades, so to speak, on it. And, there's going to be areas every home inspector is going to have probably a little bit of a niche in. Like again, I come from a roofing background. Shout out to Expert Roofing up in Crystal Lake. That's who I work with Mike Coley up there. Great company. But, I'm still going to defer to a roofing contractor to come in, look at a roof and repair it or whatever the case may be.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That makes sense. And as well, again, and like you said, I'm there to go over and give it a look.
Right.
And let you know my findings.
Right.
And then once you find it, these are the areas of concern that need further evaluation.
Yes.
And because there's no way in 3 or 4 hours you are going to get to every aspect of this house and be able to, know every nook and cranny.
No.
So, you're going with an overview on it of some of the worst common issues, worst issues that you look for based on the experience and your checklist that you have. So
we tell the clients, it's a snapshot in time.
Right.
It's what we see that day. And the reason we're specific about that is because they may not move into that house for 3 to 4 months.
Right.
Afterwards. So, that's why we're really pretty specific about that and add a lot of pictures.
Oh, exactly. And now let me ask you this, going through everything, and on some of the stuff that you have found, what would you say is the most, common issues that you find that are, most of them, this is what we're going to find. And what is the weirdest thing you found during an inspection?
Well, once you get into attics and crawl spaces, sometimes there's things you wish you could unsee. As far as common issues go, it's drainage. Just getting water away from the foundation, honestly, it's probably one of the least cost-effective repairs that can save you a ton of money down the road. Some pumps, kind of going down the plumbing road, we test those out and they're often neglected or people just forget about them. There's numerous times where I've lifted a lid and the water's like right there, and the only reason it hasn't flooded the basement because it's backing up into the drain tiles.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the only reason. So it's only a matter of time before that happens.
Right.
As well. GFCI outlets, in your bathrooms and your kitchens. Again, a lot of times the older homes don't have those, but it's always a recommendation to upgrade those for safety and reasons as well. So those are some of the things. That are pretty common and pretty typical of things you find. Cleaning out the furnace and the duct venting. Especially if it's a home that's on a slab. Slab ducts. I don't think I've ever seen one that has not been horrendous. And you have to remember that's your living space air that's circulating through the rest of the house. People just don't think about duct cleaning as often as probably as they should. As far as some of the strangest things. So one of the creepier things that I saw, and I actually have this on my Facebook page, and by the way, coming up with Halloween, we do guarantee all homes are monster free, and we do provide a certificate for it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Monster or paranormal?
We just go with monster.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, any ghost that you've inherited with the house.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So.
It was a crawl space, and it wasn't what we call a belly crawler, so I was able to kind of duck walk around it. And, most home inspectors, they have a flow, and, my flow is left to right. So I'll start on the left, and normally I'll start the left wall and kind of walk the perimeter all the way, come back around the opening, and I'll, again, whenever possible, you try and do this, and you kind of work your way to the middle. And it was a typical dirt-covered crawl space. It had the cast iron drain lines, halfway sticking out of the dirt. So naturally, I was eyeballing those pretty good for corrosion and any cracks. And then I get to the middle or the back to the entrance. So I'm going to work my way to the middle and start looking at, the underneath and the support piers and things. And so, first of all, again, the crawl space is completely empty. So I thought, completely empty. And I get to the middle, shine my flashlight. This is a good-sized crawl space, too. Right dead center in the middle. And, if you ever want to find the center of a square, you go corner to corner with an X, right? And that's where you're going to find your center. There was a old-fashioned school desk right in the middle of the crawl space. And when I say old-fashioned, it was the type that you sat in, that with the lid lifted up,
right.
That's what
the chair was part of it. It was all one piece. The chair was
part of it. This was right in dead center of the middle of the crawl space. The only thing in the crawl space.
Why are you criticizing somebody's timeout chair?
You know what? I get that a lot. It's like, that was the timeout chair. It's like, well, I wouldn't want to be in timeout down there. I mean, this was your typical dingy, smelly. And this, again,
it's a deterrent.
It wasn't even moved over by the door like we're going to take it with us. It was just like, that's where it was. And it's like, okay.
What do you expect, timeout to be fun? Timeout is a deterrent.
Yeah,
you want them in the middle.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, kids spent any time down there, it would definitely be a deterrent, I'm sure. But that was probably one of the things that it's like, and sometimes after so many inspections, you just quit asking why. Because you just don't want to know. You just really don't want to know. I've run across bats in attics.
Okay.
Live bats, by the way, as well. Everything from huge hornets' nests the size of bales of hay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Those, you kind of tend to come up on those all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden you freeze on it. Of course, animals, raccoons, possums, snakes in crawl spaces. Locally, we're not in Florida or out in California where we have to run into scorpions potentially. So,
man, that wouldn't be bad.
Yeah,
well, it would be very bad.
But we tend to conflict with Mother Nature quite a bit, and of course, we give them free rein when we come across those. Yeah, we get out of their way.
Yeah, the weirdest thing I found, I'm just going to say it briefly. We were digging a sewer about 15 years ago, and it was in a house in Chicago. Got down and found a headstone.
Wow.
I'm going to leave that one alone. But that's for next week's Halloween show.
Okay.
Yeah, found a headstone. So you do, and also in houses that people have found on newer houses, they find beer cans up on the ductwork. You ever see those beer cans and everything?
Yeah. In the walls. Yeah. I'll find beer cans quite a few places.
There you go. Also, too, are you finding a lot of the issues that you found? We're going to kind of go through these real quick.
Okay.
Some of the issues that you find that during the home inspection, do you find that they're maintenance related?
A good portion. You get into some of the homes and it's just the maintenance have gone by the wayside for whatever reason as well. And, you think, wow, if there's just coat of paint, here and there, or just keeping it up to speed sometimes can really save a home a lot, And part of it, I think, is just, again, lack of education. When people get into homes, they don't know what they're supposed to take care of, or they don't know how long something is going to last without maintenance, or what the lifespan is on certain things if you just let it go. And I think it's just, a part of it is just not knowing. Mechanicals is a big thing, furnace and AC.
Right.
You can buy a lot of years on those. You just get them cleaned and checked every single year. It's not that expensive. And, you can again, you definitely add some time to those.
Now, here's one common thing that I found, and I've run into this with people who have bought a new house. They had a home inspection, and I want to say probably few months in, they have sewer issues, and they're quick to blame the previous owner. And that kind of ties into what you said, is certain maintenance wasn't done. And say this house is a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house, and the people that bought it have, they're a family of 5, they got 3 kids, and it's backing up. And they're getting mad. They're saying, well, the previous owners, they should have known this. They should have known this. This shouldn't have happened right away. And then I'm like, okay, well, theoretically they would. And then I asked them, I said, who did you buy it from? Oh, we bought it from an older couple. Okay. Yeah. I said, were they the only ones that lived here? Oh, yeah, their kids had moved out. They lived here for like 30 years. Their kids have grown up and moved out. I said, well, there's your problem. She goes, well, they should have known. I said, no. I said, you have to realize this house was built to operate one way. They used it for that long, and then they only used it as a couple.
Right.
The amount of water an average retired couple is using is not very much.
No.
So they're not going to know of any kind of water backups generally right away. A 6-inch sewer holds 1.5 gallons of water per foot.
Right.
A 4-inch holds 1 gallon about. So you figure, if they're doing laundry and they got a partial blockage and they're doing laundry maybe once a week, if that.
Yeah, it's never going to come out.
No.
They're not going to really notice it.
Now you've added, with a family, you added probably 5 times the demand on this line.
Right.
With the 3 different, the 5 different showers and baths, whatever you're taking. Now with the load of laundry that you're doing with having a family, how the house was designed, that's why they didn't know. So like you said about maintenance, a lot of times you'll have, people who have lived there, they've aged along with the house.
Right.
They can't do a lot of the things that they normally did. That was another thing that I ran into. So a lot of times what you'll have is, I found with people, they get upset and they're quick to blame, and sometimes understanding that you're using this house differently than the previous owner had used it.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And it aged at that point where you always kind of pinpoint when something happened. What were you doing when? And what changed in that time? And you have a time in there between the time that the kids moved out or that they became empty nesters, that line maybe had time for roots to grow in, or maybe a blockage to kind of build up, or whatever the case may be. So that is something to bring in. It also brings into the recommendation that you have, and I'm glad that you're one of the home inspectors out there that recommend a sewer line to be televised.
Yeah, absolutely. I recommend sewer scopes with every inspection, whether it's a brand new build, old home. And that kind of goes back to, when we started an inspection, our macro view. So if I'm standing out on the street and I'm looking at the front of the house, and in the majority of time, not always, as you know, but the majority of time, those sewer lines are running from the front of the house to the street. And if I see these huge 50, 100-year-old trees in the front yard, the sewer line might be in perfect condition, but when you have those kind of trees in the front yard, the grade there as well. So that's, again, it's going to I'm going to kind of add it to my list. Not that I wouldn't recommend a sewer scope inspection anyway. I still would.
Right.
But these are things that kind of help me build that, and I'll talk to my client and, I said, I'd recommend a sewer scope, age of the home. And I do touch base upon exactly what you said. If it's an older couple that's living here and the house is dated and they're going to rehab it, or update some of the stuff in there, and now they're moving a family of 4 or 5 in there.
Right.
It's a whole nother volume.
Right.
That's going to go way up, and again, that's where those things will kind of raise their ugly head when you start getting that kind of usage as well.
You're asking a race car to go, like say you had a Porsche,
right?
And they drove it, like you drove a Porsche, opened it up a little bit, had fun with it, and then they didn't drive it a little bit, and then it sat, and then all of a sudden now you're going to drive it and expect it to do exactly what it used to do,
right?
And mechanicals don't usually work like that. But also, like I said, with houses are pretty much the same thing. Is you want to check all these things that you can't see as much as you can, and the sewers are one of those utilities or parts of the house that you don't see it. And if you can do anything to get it could be expensive repair. One of the most expensive repairs.
That could be a very expensive repair. And again, and I tell them we're not likely to back that line up with flushing some toilets and running sinks.
No.
We're not likely to, and if we do, then you've got a bigger problem, but we're not likely to create that problem with what we do.
Right.
That's why it's so important to get a camera down there by someone who knows how to operate that camera and knows what they're looking at. I have seen some guys doing sewer scopes, and it's like, this guy's scaring me.
Right, because they're looking to sell something rather than looking for structure,
right,
and looking for the integrity of the line.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Kevin, for being on the show. Always a pleasure to have you on, and always informative. Thank you. People want to get in touch with you. How do they reach you?
The KGM Home Inspection website, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. 815-370-6644 is my cell. Call or text anytime. And also serving Northwest Indiana now. We also carry a license in Indiana for you brokers and agents who are dual licensed but don't have an inspector over there.
Thank you, sir. Thank everybody for listening, and we'll see you all next week.